Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Skeele, and this is my next recording, my next video in my series that I'm doing on my first book, You Can Make It Heaven, How to Enrich Your Life with Abundance and Loving. And this is key number 4, get to know your true self. I'm doing this series to tease out the major points in this book, because there's a lot of information in this book that I wrote. Actually, I published it in 2002. It's been out for many, many years. And hundreds of people have benefited from this book. And I'm really wanting to bring forward heaven again because I'm feeling very pulled to talk about how we can live our life in a different way than pretty much what we are taught, what we are shown, what we are modeled in the world, because you can have a life of heaven if you so choose. So these are keys to begin to consider how you might apply some of these keys for you. And of course, I hope one of them will be kind of an entry point for you. It'll be a place where you go, you know what, that really appeals to me. I want to pursue that one, or I want to consider that one, or I want to explore, unpack that one. So the key number 4, get to know your true self. Wow. I talk a lot about my 30s, because my 30s was a time when my life took a completely different direction. And my story is actually in this book, and I've alluded to it in all the keys. And at that time, when I was really in a time of great disillusionment, I did not know who I was. I thought I did. I thought I pretty much knew that I was a good person, and I was loyal, and I was loving, and I was a good mother, and a good wife, and a community contributor. In other words, I knew a lot of things about me, but I didn't really know the trueness of me. Because quite honestly, I had created a lot of, let's say, facsimiles, a lot of copies. I showed a certain face to the world. I showed up in a certain way. I wanted people to think a certain thing about me. I call those the self-images that we have in our life. And a lot of them were false. Not in a deceiving way or deceptive way, but just that they really weren't truly who I was. And I didn't do it on purpose. I had not taken the deeper journey to find out who I was. I want to read you a quote that I have at the beginning of chapter 1 that really was one of the main, let's say, awakeners that came into my life about the time I began to go through a lot of big changes. And this particular quote really confused me. I didn't know what it meant at the time. I was just like befuddled. So let me read it to you. It probably make great sense to you, but at the time in my life, it didn't mean a lot. It is rewarding to find someone whom you like, but it is essential to like yourself. What does that mean? It is quickening to recognize that someone is a good and decent human being, but it is indispensable to view yourself as acceptable. Oh. It is a delight to discover people who are worthy of respect and admiration and love, but it is vital to believe yourself deserving of these things. Uh-oh. For you cannot live in someone else. You cannot find yourself in someone else. You cannot be given a life by someone else. Of all the people you will know in a lifetime, you're the only one you will never leave nor lose. To the question of your life, you're the only answer. To the problems of your life, you are the only solution. I had no idea. And I went, really? I'm not sure I believe this. This was not my reality. But this particular quote began to stir something inside of me, so that when my nice, neat, wonderful, beautiful, in control life shattered in a million pieces, I began to find out what that quote really meant. In other words, I began to discover the trueness of who I am, my true self. Your heaven and your true self live in the same place. The true self comes from the greater self of who you are, not your personality, not your ego, not the mask or faces you'd like to put on and have people believe about you or know about you, or even you know about yourself. It is the deeper truth that you are completely 100% deserving of loving, of praise, of admiration, of acceptance, of health, of wealth, of happiness, and all the other banquet table of life. This was a huge awakening for me, because even though I had a life that seemed to be a banquet table, because I lived a very wealthy lifestyle at the time, it seemed like I had everything at the banquet table, and I did. I had a lot. I had a lot of the banquet table, but what I didn't have inside was really knowing the trueness of me in such a way that I was at peace, that I felt like I was at home, that I didn't have to pretend, that I didn't have to make excuses, that I didn't have hidden pockets of shame or, oh, I don't deserve that I didn't really love myself. I didn't know what that was. So the journey of knowing the true self, of discovering that for yourself, I like to call the Camino. Camino is a word that means path or journey. And in fact, I do a workshop every year called the Camino of the True Self. And it is a journey. It's an awakening. It's a discovery. It is something that we really are all on. I'd like to suggest that you are already on the path of discovering your true self. It just depends on your choices along the way. In other words, do you really want to spend more time in finding out about the trueness of you? Does that appeal to you? Does that call you? And if so, that will reveal to you your heaven. That will bring your heaven forward, because your heaven is all about the trueness of you. And I can't talk about the true self without talking about the divine self, because your divinity, the part of you that is holy, the part of you that is of God. And I'm going to say that word, whatever you call that word, source, if there's another word you like, please substitute it. That part of you that is of the source, the greaterness, the divineness of who you are, is your true self. And when you begin to live and know that, then life takes on a very different focus. And there's a place inside of each one of us that then informs our life. And we live from that place, from the inside out into the world from that place. And life is a heaven, because life is heaven inside. Sure, we can have, lovely things out here in the world. And I'm not saying that those don't count. And yet, if we don't know the heaven inside, and if we don't know the trueness of who we are, we're bankrupt, quite honestly, because I know I walked through it. And I'm sure some of you have as well. So key number 4 is get to know your true self. And again, I want to say you're already on that journey. It just depends on if you'd like to know it in a greater way. And in my book, You Can Make It Heaven, I talk about ways you can do that and show examples of that. And I'm not I'm going to stop there because I could keep going here. Um, let me just review the keys that I've gone over so far in the book, because really all of it is about the true self. The first key is heaven is. Allow yourself to visualize, to really fantasize, if my life were to be a heaven, what would that look like, feel like? What would I be experiencing? The second key is you don't need fixing, you need loving. Oh, wow. One of the big ones that I think all of us come to at some time in our life, where we realize I'm fine the way I am. I just need to love myself that way. Wake up from the knock on the door. I talked about that in the last key, where we really need to wake up out of the illusions of our life and soberly take a good self-evaluation. And many times what that means is we go on the deeper journey. And then this key is get to know your true self. The next key I'm going to talk about is create a safe place within. This will be the first key that I really go into a tool, a skill, about one of the ways in which we can begin to open up to our true self, because a lot of times when we do that, we run into a lot of things about ourselves, a lot of feelings, judgments, beliefs, shames, blames that we don't like. So how do you deal with that so that you can clear that out and come to the truth of who you are? So that's next time in my next key. Until then, I hope you make your life a heaven. Bye for now.